Game 7 in the 2021 semifinal. Shorthanded break the other way, the puck's in the net, and then it's not. The goal is waved off, the building erupts, and over the noise you can hear it. Chants about the cap. People pointing at the bench, yelling 18 million over, the Lightning skate to the face-off dot like it's nothing wrong. To understand why that moment sounded like a trial, we have to go back to 2015, when Tampa lost the final to Chicago in 6. They had speed and talent, but not a complete identity. What followed would define a dynasty and its enemies. Act 1. Blueprint and Baptism, 2015 to 2019. The loss to Chicago hardened Tampa's thinking. Steve Yzerman and his staff started doing roster math like engineers. Lock in the pillars, let the rest be modular. Victor Hedman signed value that aged well, a succession plan that shifted the net to Andrei Vasilevsky, and in the third round, they found Braden Point. Small by old scouting standards, ruthless by any measure. The idea wasn't stars-only hockey, it was layers. Draft and develop became a conveyor belt from Syracuse to Tampa. Alex Killorn owned the walls, Yanni Gourde brought relentless forecheck pressure, and Andre Palat turned matchups into a weapon. Anthony Cirelli closed time and space like a hinge. Meanwhile, Nikita Kucherov went from bargain bridge to elite scorer with timing that matched the rising cap. They weren't only collecting talent, they were collecting roles that fit together. By 2018, the cap tension got real. Extensions stacked up and every dollar needed a purpose. The Lightning leaned into their edge, speed that didn't wilt under contact, and depth that could handle hard minutes. Then came the mirage. 62 wins in 2018 and 19, the President's Trophy, and a team that looked untouchable. 4 games later, Columbus sent them home. That sweep would hurt because it exposed a problem. Tampa could dance, but could they grind when the ice got heavy? In that series, no. Entries met a playoff wall. Skill got pushed outside the dots, and Vasilevsky saw too many clean looks because pucks weren't dying on the boards. This was the moment everything changed. The Lightning did not abandon speed. They added weight to it. The mandate became heavy skill. Win the first battle on the wall, then play fast. Search for wingers who retrieved, killed penalties, and still kept transitions alive. And accept a new truth at the deadline. Don't chase highlight names. Pay premiums for players whose games survive May and June. They would bet picks and risk ridicule because the roster needed playoff traits and not headlines. The next spring would test whether the blueprint could take a punch. Act 2. The Controversy Engine, 2020 to 2021. The 2020 deadline gave the league its first clue. Tampa sent first-round picks for Blake Coleman and Barclay Goodrow, third-line names with first-round prices. Critics said it was reckless, and inside the room it was alignment. Stars accepted tighter minutes, the team would attack in waves, and the new guys would do hard jobs without complaint. In the bubble, the premiums paid off. Braden Point buried daggers in overtime. Hedman swallowed minutes and won the Conn Smythe. And Coleman flew through the air to finish a goal that felt like a billboard for the trade. Meanwhile, Tampa's bottom 6 turned long shifts into slow bleeds. The plan worked in the only place that mattered. Then something else. Nikita Kucherov needed hip surgery before the 2021 season. The team chose a timeline that kept him out for the entire regular season to place him on long-term injured reserve. They prioritized long-term health over regular season points. The CBA allowed cap relief during the season and didn't apply the cap in the playoffs. Legal, strategic, and instantly polarizing. From the outside, the story wrote itself. The Lightning entered the 2021 playoffs with Kucherov fresh and the roster effectively over the cap by $18 million. On talk shows, it would be framed as cheating. In the rink, it was a chorus of boos. Inside, the rules are not, optics are emotional, and Tampa became a villain. Kucherov returned for Game 1 and put up multiple point nights like he hadn't missed a week. It was gasoline on the fire, but inside the games, the Lightning looked like the team they'd engineered. The Gourde line, Gourde, Coleman, Goodrow, took the hardest minutes and tilted ice through retrievals and exits. Hedman and Eric Cernak formed a spine that shoved chances out of the slot. Ryan McDonough worked in rotation with David Savard, a 2021 deadline ad, to kill cycles and keep the crease clear. and Vasilevsky, in a quieter environment, slammed doors in elimination games, shutouts that felt inevitable more than spectacular. Stars bought into smaller slices. Steven Stamkos stayed present when minutes tightened. Point hunted the middle, then backchecked like a third liner. Kucherov made the power play feel unfair. The whole thing worked because the hierarchies were clear: score up top, own the walls below, defend in layers, and let the goalie finish the argument. Then came the microphones. After the 2021 Cup, Kucherov's #1 bullshit line about awards voting turned him into a target beyond Tampa. It crystallized rivals' frustration. They didn't just win, they didn't care if you liked how. Jerseys landed on visiting ice, broadcasters shook their heads, and the phrase cap circumvention stuck like a label. What fewer people saw was how much the Lightning were already paying for this. They traded futures for Coleman and Goodrow. They reshaped roles to keep everyone inside a narrow budget. Veterans took less than they could have demanded, and younger depth accepted penalty kill shifts that hurt stat lines but won games. The market hadn't priced middle six playoff impact yet, and Tampa built on the gap. Meanwhile, identity hardened. Every forecheck had a purpose, every line had a job, and if the game got ugly, the Lightning didn't blink. They didn't always outshoot teams, they outchanced them where it matters. The controversy didn't slow them down, however. It clarified the mission. The chants became background noise, the cap debate lived on sports radio, and in the room, the rule book was simple. Exploit what's allowed, accept the backlash, lift the cup. 2 years, 2 banners, and a bill that everyone knew would arrive. Act 3. The bill comes due, 2022 to 2023. The push for a third straight cup felt like a marathon on tired legs. Braden Point got injured, and every matchup tightened. Colorado brought pace from the back end that stressed every seam. Tampa still found moments, timely kills, Point trying to play through pain, but the Avalanche rolled lines and attacked off their defense. In the end, the Lightning bent in places that had held on for 2 years. It wasn't collapse, it was attrition. Meanwhile, the cap squeeze would take a chunk out of their identity. Ryan McDonough went on to Nashville for relief, and the leadership minutes vanished with him. He'd been the quiet fixture when games tilted. Lose that, and the slot gets a little cleaner for opponents, the rebounds a little harder to clear. It turns out that you can replace a name on a board, but replacing 22 calm minutes is much harder. The churn kept on coming. The expansion draft would take Yanni Gourde. Coleman and Goodrow cashed in. Andre Palat walked and left a playoff resume that no spreadsheet could fully price. An entire line that had owned heavy minutes across 2 runs would be gone. But Tampa didn't panic. Julien Brisebois doubled down on his market read, cost-controlled wingers with games that scale in the spring, and Brandon Hagel arrived for 2 firsts. Tanner Jeannot cost a pile of futures. The skates were obvious. If they hit, the window stretched. If they didn't, the pipeline thinned. In 2023 against Toronto, the cracks would show. Special teams swung nights, and without McDonough-type insulation, slot chances spiked, and even Vasilevsky looked human when traffic arrived a half-second sooner. Hagel's motor translated, but chemistry takes reps, and the playoffs don't hand out time. Toronto won moments that Tampa used to own. Retrievals, net front battles, rebounds settled instead of swatted. The LTIR optics still hung over everything. Critics said the Edge had trained them to live beyond their means. The reality was less dramatic and much more human. Aging curves don't take discounts. Minutes eaters don't grow on trees. You can be right on process and still pay a cost you never saw coming. And yet the room didn't fracture. When John Cooper benched stars in late-season jolts, Steven Stamkos confronted him and then reset the standard. But it wasn't a coup, it was alignment, the same currency that kept egos in check throughout the highs. They knew what they were losing. Later draft slots, picks spent, fewer Palat and Gourde types bubbling up from Syracuse. The dynasty didn't explode, though. It eroded at the edges. The outrage would cool, and what remained was a roster that was built on the same math, just with less margin for error. The plan worked out, and the bill was paid in futures, in veterans lost, and in room for rivals to catch them. Act 4. Meaning and Legacy. So what was the controversy about, really? fluency with a rulebook that most teams only skim, an injury timeline handled conservatively and legally, paying for playoff trades before the market called them premium. People remember the loophole because it's an easy story. The harder story is how every part fit in: cap geometry, role clarity, and patience. The innovation wasn't a trick, it was only structure. Stars scored, middle six grinders owned the walls, defensemen killed cycles instead of chasing hits. And the goalie closed the door by facing predictable looks when it mattered. That's what we call a template, not a hack. They found an inefficiency in the market and leaned in hard. Third-line impact that travels into May, retrievals, forecheck layers, penalty killing would be undervalued. Tampa paid firsts for it while others chased names. And once the banners went up, the prices changed league-wide. That's influence, bringing in copycats and inflation. The Kucherov return built a villain mask that covered the engineering beneath it, telling rivals what they wanted to hear. This wasn't sustainable, it was sneaky. And then the Lightning won again, and the story had to bend around the second banner. The anger did not create the dynasty, it simply made the road much more loud. Stack them up against the Blackhawks and the Kings, and the key difference is timeline management. Those cores would peak young and then hit cap walls, and Tampa extended its window with surgical flips. Pay here, save there, bank on development, offload when the math demands it. When the costs arrived, they took it. No shortcuts, only choices. And the human column matters. Stamkos stayed when he could have left, Hedman took value, Point accepted matchups that don't pad awards cases, and veterans agreed to roles that shrink headlines and grow parades. That alignment is both rare and fragile, but it held on long enough. There were real costs, though. McDonough left, identity lines dissolved, the prospect pool would thin, and you can see it now in tighter series and shorter summers. But there's a spine that simply endures. Vasilevsky's prime, Point's playoff gear, Hedman's reads, a front office that turned scarcity into advantage. Other teams studied it and adjusted because the model works. If you're a rival, the lesson is both simple and hard. Overpay for traits that scale, weaponize LTIR within the rules, accept that tomorrow will hurt if today wins. Tampa showed the path and the price. They didn't apologize for either. Even as the margin shrank, the architecture held. So the conversation still starts with them. Tampa's dynasty was not a loophole. It was disciplined timing and the will to take heat for winning. If you want more inside-the-room stories on how contenders are really built, be sure to subscribe and check out our deep dive on the Kucherov LTIR saga to see the mechanics behind the noise. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.